Some men enter history through courage, others through conquest. But Grigori Rasputin, he slipped into history like a shadow through a locked door, whispered about long before he ever stood in the palace of the Romanovs. A wandering mystic from a frozen Siberian village, a man who could barely write his own name, yet somehow became the most feared, most hated, and most mythologized figure in the final days of Imperial Russia. The story begins not in St. Petersburg, but in a remote stretch of Siberia, where winters devour the land and survival is an act of will. That's where a young, restless Rasputin first earned his reputation, not as a holy man, but as a troublemaker. Rumors followed him, strange visions, sudden disappearances, a stare that made people uneasy, and a presence they couldn't quite explain. He wandered from monastery to monastery, earning both awe and suspicion. Some said he healed the sick. Others claimed he seduced the faithful. All agreed on one thing: where Rasputin went, stories followed. What propelled this obscure peasant toward the heart of the Russian Empire remains one of history's most unsettling enigmas. But the turning point was unmistakable: the night he arrived in St. Petersburg. The capital was a world Rasputin had no business entering, a glittering city of aristocrats, ministers, and generals. Yet Rasputin walked among them with the confidence of a prophet and the unpredictability of a storm. It didn't take long for whispers to reach the palace. Nicholas II and his wife, Empress Alexandra, were tormented by a private agony. Their only son and heir, Alexei, suffered from hemophilia, a disease doctors could not treat. Every fall, every bruise, every injury could destroy him. The empire rested on the bones of a dying child. And then came Rasputin. Accounts differ on their first meeting. Some say the Empress felt a jolt of hope the moment she saw him. Others claim that Rasputin simply had a gift, an ability to make desperate people believe. But one thing is certain: when the young Tsarevich cried out in pain and Rasputin prayed over him, the bleeding eased. Doctors were stunned. Alexandra was convinced. And Nicholas felt, perhaps for the first time in years, a sliver of relief. To the imperial family, Rasputin was a miracle. To everyone else, he was a catastrophe. As his influence grew, so did the rumors. Aristocrats whispered that he controlled the Empress. Ministers insisted he meddled in government decisions. Priests condemned him as a fraud. Women accused him of manipulation. Some feared him, others loathed him, but none could ignore him. Rasputin's rise coincided with Russia's unraveling. The empire was drowning in corruption, food shortages, and military disasters. While soldiers died at the front, Rasputin mingled with the elite, preaching salvation one hour and indulging in excess the next. His contradictions only fueled the myth: the holy sinner, the healer who drank, the prophet who sinned, the peasant who walked like a king. And through it all, Alexandra defended him with a ferocity that shocked even her closest advisors. She was convinced that without Rasputin, her son would die, and with him, the dynasty. Her faith was absolute, and in a collapsing empire, absolute faith is a dangerous thing. Political leaders believed Rasputin's influence endangered Russia. Their fear turned to desperation, and so they plotted, not for reform, not for negotiation, but for murder. The killing of Rasputin is one of the most dramatic assassination stories in modern history. His enemies planned a death that would be quiet, clean, and decisive. They invited him to a palace under the pretense of a party. They served him cakes and wine laced with cyanide, enough poison to kill several men. Yet Rasputin ate, drank, and laughed. Panicked, they shot him. Rasputin fell. They celebrated. And then, unbelievably, he rose again, crawled across the floor, tried to escape. They shot him again, beat him, bound him, dragged him to the frozen Neva River. And finally, beneath the ice, the man who refused to die succumbed to the one force myth cannot overcome. His death should have calmed Russia. Instead, it became a symbol, too little, too late. Within months, the Romanov Dynasty collapsed. Nicholas abdicated. Revolution ignited. The empire dissolved into fire and chaos. Some blamed Rasputin for the fall. Others blamed those who killed him. But the truth is far more complex. Rasputin did not destroy Russia. He simply exposed the cracks already spreading beneath its glittering surface. Even now, his legacy remains a riddle. Was he a healer or a charlatan? A mystic or a manipulator? A savior to the Tsarevich or a parasite feeding off a dying monarchy? Historians argue. Psychologists speculate. Novelists invent. But one fact remains undeniable. Rasputin became the ghost of a vanished empire. The man whose life and death marked the beginning of the end. The final, chaotic symbol of a dynasty teetering on the edge of oblivion. And as long as stories of power, fear, and mystery endure, the name Rasputin will continue to echo, half legend, half nightmare, across the frozen memories of Russia's last dynasty.